pure experiences.
Welcome to the Pure Experiences Podcasts.
Number 29. No such thing as enlightenment. Maharaj often says that very few of those who come to him are novices in spiritual knowledge. Generally, they are those who have traveled far and wide in quest of knowledge, read many books, met many gurus, and have a certain idea of what it is all about, but rarely a clear vision of what they have been seeking. Many of them do not hesitate to acknowledge that all their efforts proved unrewarding and they felt frustrated and disappointed. And there are some who even wonder if they have been chasing a mere will-o-wisp. However, in spite of all their frustration and dejection, they do seem to know that life does have an ultimate meaning. Maharaj feels deeply concerned for such visitors and takes personal interest in them, but he totally ignores those who have come to him out of an idle curiosity or with the object of talking about him at a weekend party with a holier-than-thou attitude or perhaps with condescension. Then there is a class of people, the half-baked intellectuals, who come to Maharaj to test their own accumulated knowledge. And when answering Maharaj's usual query about their spiritual background, such persons seldom fail to mention with a sense of pride the long list of books they have studied and the sages and saints they have met. Maharaj receives such information with an impish chuckle and might say something that would inflate their egos even further. For example, he might say, well then, we should have an unusually good conversation today. Or he might say, well, I must say we are all honored today by your presence and we should be able to learn something new. Or he might say, I have only studied up to the 4th standard in a primary school and here you are, a PhD in philosophy with all the Upanishads at your fingertips. How gratifying. Discussions as they proceed would have a wide range of reactions from these worthy luminaries. Some of them would start from the standpoint that they considered themselves to be more or less on the same level as Maharaj himself. Then within a few minutes, the enormous difference would be so palpably obvious that they would adopt an attitude of humility and listen rather than talk. They would soon realize the hollowness of their pedantry and spaciousness of their pet theories and concepts. One morning, a European lady came to Maharaj. She effusively praised the book I Am That and said that it was her great good fortune that she was able to pay her respects to Maharaj in person. She had travelled far and wide and met many spiritual teachers, but had never felt that she had found what she was looking for, and that she was now sure her search had finally ended at Maharaj's feet. Apparently, she had had a few experiences which other gurus had probably certified as proof of her spiritual progress. She began narrating these experiences to Maharaj in a great detail. Maharaj listened to what she was saying for a few minutes and then interrupted her by asking, tell me, who had these experiences? Who felt pleased by these experiences? In the absence of what would these experiences not have arisen at all? Exactly where do you figure in these experiences? Over this fairly long period of spiritual training, what is the identity you have been able to discover as you? Do not please feel for a moment, said Maharaj, that I intend to insult you, but you really must get clear answers to these questions before you can decide whether you are proceeding along the right lines. At the present juncture, you are like a 5-year-old child who has been decked in fine clothes and lovely ornaments. The same child 3 years earlier would have either ignored the fine clothes and ornaments or would have accepted them as a nuisance forced on her by her doting parents. But now, after the conditioning that she has received in the meantime, the child cannot wait until she can go out and gloat over the envy of her little friends who don't possess such fineries. What has happened between infancy and childhood is exactly that which is the obstacle to your seeing your true nature. The infant, unlike the child, still retains its subjective personality and identity. Before the conditioning, it refers to itself by its name, treats itself as merely an object, not as me, the cognizer subject. Think deeply on what I have said. Personal entity and enlightenment cannot go together. If, after what I have told you, you still decide to continue to visit me, I must warn you, Maharaj said jocularly, you will not only not acquire anything, but you will lose whatever you have acquired with so much effort over the past many years. What is more, you will even lose yourself. So be warned. You will, if you continue to visit me, come to the conclusion that there is no me or you to seek enlightenment. Indeed, that there is no such thing as enlightenment. The apperception of this fact is itself enlightenment. The lady sat lost in thought. The superstructure of make-believe that she had built so assiduously over the years was shaken to its foundations. She folded her hands in obeisance to Maharaj and sought his permission to visit him daily as long as she was in Bombay. You are welcome, said Maharaj. Here ends the number 29, no such thing as enlightenment. And we learn something that can be shocking for many people, and that is that enlightenment cannot be gotten. You cannot get enlightenment as an extra jewel in the crown, an achievement. Why so? Because if you take the literal meaning of the word enlightenment, which means internal light, and when prefixed points to something internal, and light is something through which we know, through which we see. What is that internal something through which we see? And that is the absolute awareness. The awareness illuminates all perception, all thoughts, all experiences are illuminated by the experiencer. It is the internal light. Now, can you get it? It is obvious. It is impossible. It is never absent, so you cannot get it. And that's what people are trying to do. They are trying to get it. And an extra qualification probably. And Balsekar is jokingly telling the stories of such people who read so many books that they think they are now enlightened. They were not enlightened before. Now, after reading so many books, they have become enlightened. So those who hold such kind of notions, you can say that there is some kind of darkness still left in them. And then there is the different kind of people who are seeking experiences. The bookish knowledge does nothing to them. They are seeking extraordinary experiences. And when they collect a hoard of these experiences, they start thinking that now I have become enlightened. And sometimes the gurus or teachers will also encourage the person like this, that, oh yes, you got this kind of experience, that kind of experience. That means now you're progressing towards enlightenment. Go faster, as if it is a race, as if it is something that you have lost. Then you are running here and there to find it. And there is very funny thing that among the spiritual students, there is a feeling of jealousy. When they see that somebody else is enlightened, I am not. Now there's some kind of competition going on here. Who can become more enlightened? So this is the state of affairs in the spiritual scene. And Maharaj, as usual, simply demolishes the whole concept of enlightenment by saying that there is no me or you to seek enlightenment. Indeed, that there is no such thing as enlightenment. And knowing this fact is itself enlightenment. You will find me saying this so many times that enlightenment is the biggest disappointment in the universe. It is like finding your glasses on you sitting on your nose when you're searching it everywhere in your house. It is very underwhelming to know. And many seekers have this internal resistance of some kind that again and again they are told, look, this absolute awareness is all there is. It does not get any better than this. And they do not like this thing. Because I know it since childhood. Tell me something new. I did not become a seeker just to know this simple thing. That yes, there is awareness. So what? Everybody has the same thing. Tell me something which can make me special. Give me something so that I can die happily with this achievement. So yes, it is a very simple thing. It is basic. It is essential. And a characteristic of anything that is essential is that it is very simple. There are no bells and whistles in that. And it looks like an obvious truth when you encounter it. This is the characteristic of anything that is very, very fundamental. It is so obvious that it cannot be seen. It is like air. You cannot see it, but you are always in it. So whatever you call as enlightenment is simply falling away of your beliefs and assumptions. Now you can see why it is a disappointment, because these are the things that you accumulated, isn't it? You got it from books, you got it from super duper heavy duty spiritual masters. Now you don't want to give them away. You don't like their destruction. And keep seeking. The seeking should end in one sentence. That you are this absolute awareness. Look. In this looking, which happens in a split second, that's the end of spiritual seeking. Now, if you are interested, you can analyze the implications of this. Oh, that means I was not born and I'm not going to die. And there is no I am. And there is no you. And so on. You can spend rest of your life simply enumerating the implications of this simple fundamental thing. So like Maharaj said here in this chapter, that you will lose whatever you were given. The final thing you lose is the person itself. He gives a very good example of the infant. The infant has no person. There is no person there. Infant is so pure. Actually, in many traditions, including India, where there is a saying that infants or the children are a form of God. They are as innocent as God himself. Actually, they are God. So there are many rituals in India where children are the main limelight of that ritual. They are given special bath and they are given a special dress, and specially cooked God food is given to them. And when the child eats, everybody else is now allowed to eat, and so on. I mean, they're very, very funny kind of rituals. And now the external skeleton has remained, and the real feeling behind that ritual is all gone. It is degraded. People still do it. Some of them, they get it, what they are doing. But it is now a curiosity thing for many people. And you can see it in the child. There are many children who will say their name when you ask them that, who did this? Who spilled the popcorn? And they will say, this name did this. There is no I also. Isn't that child perfectly enlightened? Because there is not much that is covered, that psyche yet. Very, very pure. There are no good qualities. And there are no bad qualities also. It is alive, functioning thing. However, after a few years, just like he says, that conditioning happens. The impurities are transmitted from the society to the child. If not society, if you don't like this kind of blame game, then the survival itself, the survival process, the samsara itself will pollute this very, very pure entity. You don't need the society really. Society is an outcrop of survival process only. Whatever twisted things we find in society and people are the result of the extreme survival pressures only. Anyway, that is a different topic. So somehow during this human existence, the enlightenment is lost. Now you come across a guru and he simply reminds you, look, you are this child. That's all. That's all you need to remember. There's nothing else to enlightenment. The act of seeking enlightenment is an egoic adventure. An ego is all about accumulating more and more and more. Give me more. And as soon as you get more, that is now tiny-whiny, you want more enlightenment. So many people are trapped in this kind of egoic activity, which they think is spiritual. If you are on a genuine spiritual path, be ready, because you will be reduced to nothing. No enlightenment for you. Now go out, throw the trash, chop the wood. Now we skip to number 32, a personal experience. It is not unusual for Maharaj during the course of a session to pick out someone from the regular visitors and ask him about his personal reaction to his talks. He might say, tell me what specifically you have gathered from my talks that has remained firmly in your mind. Or he might ask, having heard what I have to say, what firm conclusion have you come to in regard to your true identity? It has been my experience that whatever Maharaj says is always spontaneous, and that it is pointless therefore to try to think of specific reasons why he puts such queries and why to particular persons. The immediate reaction to such query from Maharaj is naturally one of bewilderment. But understandably, it's also tantamount to a confession that after listening to what he has been saying, that is the Shravanam, adequate independent meditation over it, that is the Manan, has not been done, let alone being one with the conviction arrived at, that is the Nididhyasan. The only graduated process Maharaj recommends whenever he is pressed to recommend some action by a devotee. On one such occasion, Maharaj said to one of the regular visitors, you are a learned man, and you have been listening to me now for quite some time, very patiently, very intensely, with deep concentration. Tell me in a few words what it is that I consider as the core of what I am trying to convey. Maharaj seemed to be particularly interested in the answer, for he waited patiently for it for quite some time. The devotee concerned made visible efforts to give an answer, but somehow or the other, a clear-cut exegesis would not come forth. During this intervening lull, so extraordinarily still and quiet, an answer spontaneously emerged in my mind. Awakening cannot take place so long as the idea persists that one is a seeker. When the session was over and the other visitors had left, only my friend Mullar Patan and I remained with Maharaj. I mentioned to him that a clear answer to his question had come to my mind while we were waiting for the devotee to reply, but that I had not deemed it proper to say anything during the session. On being asked, I told Maharaj what my answer was. He asked me to repeat it, and I repeated the answer more slowly and clearly. On hearing it, Maharaj sat for a moment or two with his eyes closed, a smile on his lips, and seemed very pleased with the answer. Then he asked Mullar Padan what he had to say about my answer. Mullar Padan said he had no particular comment to make, and the matter was left at that. It seemed rather a pity, for if there had been a comment from my friend, Maharaj would almost certainly have favored us with at least a brief dissertation on the subject. And there was another occasion which had special significance for me personally. While I was doing the translation at a session, I was suddenly interrupted by Maharaj. I must mention here that on some days my translation seemed to emanate more smoothly, more spontaneously than on other days, and this was one of those occasions. While I was speaking, perhaps with my eyes closed, I was not aware of any interruption from Maharaj, and it was only when my neighbor tapped on my knee firmly that I became aware of Maharaj asking me to repeat what I had just said. It took me a moment or two to recollect what I had said, and at that instant I felt myself curiously transformed out of context into a distant and almost disinterested witness to the dialogue that followed between Maharaj and me. When after a while I was back in the relevant frame of reference, I found Maharaj sitting back with a contented smile while the visitors seemed to be gaping at me in an embarrassed manner. The session then proceeded to its normal conclusion, but my translation thereafter seemed to me to be rather mechanical. I felt that something unusual had happened during the session. Unfortunately, Mullah Arpadan was not present on that day and I could not ask him about it. I therefore borrowed a tape recording of the session. The recording, however, was very poor in quality and the questions and answers were drowned in outside noises. But the tape had served my purpose because I was meditating when the tape was being run. What transpired at the session suddenly flooded back into my memory. No wonder the visitors seemed startled out of their wits. I had been having a dialogue with Maharaj and talking to him on terms of full equality, which could never have happened if I had been really conscious of what I was saying. It was not the words, but the tone of firm conviction that must have startled the visitors, as indeed I myself was when I heard the tape. I could only take some satisfaction and consolation from the fact that at the end of the dialogue, Maharaj seemed perfectly happy and contented. One might even say gratified. The dialogue between Maharaj and me had taken place on the following lines. Maharaj, would you repeat what you just said? Answer, I said, I am the consciousness in which the world appears. Everything and anything that constitutes the manifested world can therefore be nothing other than what I am absolutely. Maharaj, how can you be everything? Answer, Maharaj, how can I not be everything? All that the shadow is can never be anything beyond what the substance is. Whatever is mirrored as an image, how can it be anything more or less than that which is mirrored? Maharaj, what is your own identity then? Answer, I can be no thing. I can only be everything. Maharaj, how do you exist in the world then? In what form? Answer, Maharaj, how can I possibly exist with a form as an I? But I am always present absolutely and as consciousness relatively, in which all manifestation is reflected. Existence can only be objective, relative. I cannot therefore have a personal existence. Existence includes non-existence, appearance and disappearance, duration. But I am always present. My absolute presence as intemporality is my relative absence in the finite world. No, Maharaj, there is nothing egotistic about it. Perhaps Maharaj had raised his eyebrows. In fact, it is only when the ego collapses that this can be perceived. And anyone can say this, only there is no one who can say this. All there is a perception. Maharaj, very well, let us proceed. The talk then proceeded and I continued to translate the visitors' questions and Maharaj's answers till the session came to an end. Later I reflected upon the theme of bondage and liberation as expounded by Maharaj and tried to clarify its implications for me in my daily life. I recapitulated to myself what I had imbibed, something like chewing the cud, an expression that Maharaj uses not infrequently. When the impersonal consciousness personalized itself by identification with the sentient object, thinking of it as I, the effect was to transform the I, essentially the subject, into an object. It is this objectivizing of pure subjectivity, limiting the unlimited potential, this false identity which may be termed bondage. It is from this entitification that freedom is sought. Liberation, therefore, can be nothing other than the apperception or immediate understanding of the false as false, the seeing that self-identification is false. Liberation is seeing that it is only the consciousness seeking the unmanifested source of manifestation and not finding it because the seeker himself is the sought. Having understood this profoundly, what are its implications for me in regard to ordinary living? My basic understanding now is that there never can be any individual entity as such with independent choice of action. Therefore, how can I, in future, entertain any intentions? And if I cease to have intentions, how can there be any psychological conflicts? In the absence of intention, there can be no psychological basis for any involvement with karma. There would then be perfect alignment with whatever might happen, an acceptance of events without any feeling either of achievement or of frustration. Such living would then be non-volitional living, an absence of both positive and negative volition, an absence of both deliberate doing and deliberate not doing, going through my allotted span of life, wanting nothing and avoiding nothing, so that this life, this duration of consciousness, which has come like an eclipse on my original true state, will disappear in due course, leaving me in my absolute presence. What more could the conceptual one want? Here ends number 32, a personal experience. And here we get a glimpse of Balsekar's own insight on liberation. And since it is the seeker himself that is being sought, the liberation is liberation of the seeker from the seeker. And then what is the implication of this in the life of this apparent seeker? And Balsekar says that the life becomes a non-volitional living. And this is another name for surrender, about which I have spoken many times here. Surrender happens not as something which you become, not as something which this instrument, the psychosomatic instrument, becomes. It is a realization that it was always in surrender. Only that the surrender was covered up in these thoughts that I am the doer, I am the enjoyer, and I am the sufferer. And I have this will to do anything I please. And then consequences are also mine. And this kind of twist that happened because of the ego, the part of the mind that constructs this false identity out of whatever is happening, only this is dropped. Only this thought is dropped. And the surrender is seen there as always present. So it is an absence of both positive and negative volition, the absence of both deliberate doing and deliberate non-doing. This is what Balsekar is concluding, that this will be the effect of liberation. The liberation from the false I, the ego. So my comment here is that the surrender is already there. You need to recognize it because there is this a false sense of doer that has covered up the very pure original surrender that there is in every being, every appearance, every form that the consciousness has taken. It is already there. You need to simply open your eyes and recognize it is there. So it is like this, that a child is given a plastic joystick kind of steering wheel, and he's sitting in the car, and his father tells him that drive the car. We don't want car to, drop off the cliff and hit somebody else. So now you are responsible. You should drive the car carefully. And the whole time, father is doing the driving, but since the child has this childlike mind, he thinks that I'm also involved in this driving, and he steers the car using the toy's wheel and thinks that he is the one who has saved somebody from hitting the car or is steering the car on the right track. And the father will say, no, we don't want to go right. Turn left. And he will turn left. And the car will look like as if turning left. And the child enjoys this immensely. He gets the sense of control and adventure in doing that, in controlling the vehicle. And an ordinary person or even a seeker is like this. There is a sense of adventure and play there, that I am driving my life. I am driving this vehicle. Whenever I want, I can raise my hand and so on. All my likes and dislikes are mine. Me. So there is some kind of childish presumption there that I am the doer. And if something good or bad happens, then okay, I take the responsibility of that also. But behind all these, the life is going on as it is. It is running like a machine. It is going very perfectly, very nicely. There is a surrender there, but covered up by this sense of doership. So the liberation is liberation from the doer, and the doer can be doing anything in the dream-like, zombie-like situation I'm doing. And for a seeker, the doing is called seeking. So I'm seeking, yes. And this seeker is dropped and the surrender appears. There was nobody who was seeking. There was nothing to seek. So this is the liberation, here and now. It is happening. So what is my role here? Nothing. So the doer becomes the watcher. This is liberation. Just like everything else, this state will also pass. It is impermanent. Impermanence is the only permanent feature in all our experiences. The absolute presence will remain as it is, as it was. There's nothing else that will happen as a consequence of the liberation. There is no new life. There is no new experience. There is no new achievement after liberation. It is the same old with a new perspective. That's all.
Pure experiences.
You were listening to Pure Experiences by Tharun Pradhan.